Welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. This is Jeff, and I'm joined, as usual, by my good friends Anderson.
Hi.
And Paddy.
Howdy.
And Richard.
What?
And Michael. Richard and Michael normally go head-to-head against each other in the Mount Rushmore of any given topic. But this time around, Paddy and Anderson have boondoggled their way into the podcast to be guests, and Michael is sitting here dumbfounded, and Richard's just going with the flow. So the topic that we are going to debate and discuss and deliberate this episode is the Mount Rushmore of fictional books in movies. Whose topic was this? It was Jeff's.
Yay!
We've done the topics of movies and different topics regarding literature and books so many times in the Mount Rushmore podcast, but I'm fascinated about how the power of literature often makes its way into cinema, and it could plot devices often rotate around something important, a MacGuffin or a piece of knowledge or something that is found inside a book of some kind. So I thought it'd be fun to discuss those things, and not necessarily the real things like the Holy Bible or I don't know, the nuclear launch codes necessarily, but fictional things. So Michael's birthday is coming up next week, so it will have been the day before this podcast airs. So Michael, you go first.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, my first book I think is maybe the most obvious choice, but when you're talking about Rushmore, sometimes you do speak in an obvious language, and that is The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern from the film The Princess Bride from 1987.
Also on my list, Michael.
Very good. It's as it should be.
Guest judges or competitors, Paddy and Anderson, you guys can be like the ref in a WWE match, and you can.
I can knock them unconscious. Turns. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a couple of folding chairs in the closet. Will that help?
Yeah. What do you guys think of this choice that Richard and Michael have both selected?
I think it's got depth, it's got legs, and I hope it's leather bound.
Ooh, that sounds like a Cabernet or this choice. What is it about that book that made you choose that book in that film, Michael?
Well, for me, I think that there is like this. I think the film probably could have stood on its own without the kind of additional narrative of the sick kid being visited by his grandfather, reading him this book. And, there's just this really lovely kind of push and pull with, Fred Savage and Peter Falk is this kid that, obviously in the mid 80s just wants to stay in bed and play video games while he's sick and not listen to his grandpa reading a story. And I think the story itself works. Like if we just saw The Princess Bride as a film, it would probably be fun and funny because of all the because the way it was written. But I think that there's just this added depth of it really personalizes the film. And I just love the way that they keep kind of pulling out of the film to come back to this story being read, and just little lines like you've already read that part, and they kind of yada yada past a love scene, and it's just it really makes the film feel like it's being something that's read rather than something that's just being watched. It's a very described film, and I think that William Goldman did such a amazing like the screenplay for it is just so perfect, and I think that the addition of it being within the film about the thing that they're talking about is just it's just perfect.
Hey Michael, have you read the book at all?
Long time ago, long time ago, probably when I was 12 or 13.
Sure. So the book itself, and I know this because we just read the book to our kids into last year, is actually William Goldman presents it as his abridged version of the story, The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern. And throughout the story, he kind of breaks in with like little asides about this is kind of S. Morgenstern's, satire on the political scene in in Florin at the time, making it seem like Florin's a real place. So it gets very meta from a book perspective, and then you take that and you filter in what's going on in the movie, that it's somebody reading a book to a kid when there actually was a book called The Princess Bride. And I just love the way that kind of all interplays.
Oh, fun. So within the book, is William Goldman speaking as William Goldman?
Yes, he's speaking as a version of William Goldman who has decided to abridge his favorite novel from a kid, which was The Princess Bride.
It's funny. So he's kind of a Charlie Kaufman-esque before
Charlie Kaufman. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, that's a great first choice for both of you guys. Anderson, it occurs to me that it's, I don't know, 11:20 your time or something like that. You don't have to stay on. Don't feel like you have to.
I have young children. This is the only time I get.
Okay, you are welcome to. Are you guys as in love, Paddy and Anderson, with this film as many people seem to put this Shawshank Redemption? We also all like Elvis Costello on their MySpace profile.
I would say yes, mostly because Anderson and I actually happen to be on a social Zoom call once a week, and one of the things that we discussed this past go-round was we got into a debate on the most quotable movies ever. And The Princess Bride actually came up as one of the most quotable movies. I mean, I have no issue speaking for Anderson and myself when I say, yeah, of course we love the movie. I mean, I'd be curious to meet the person who doesn't love the movie. There's definitely going to be some socio-political or perhaps psychological issues with a person who does not love this movie.
One might say it's inconceivable.
Inconceivable. Okay, cool. So that is Richard and Michael's first choice. Richard, what is your second choice?
All right, so my second choice is from the movie Misery, and it's the book Misery Returns, which is the book that Paul Sheldon is forced to write.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Also on my list.
It's also on your list?
Oh, holy balls.
Oh, boy. No, it's the book that he is forced to write after he's been sort of waylaid, kidnapped, hobbled, all sorts of things by Annie, his captor. And I love the idea that it turns out to be his favorite book that he has written in that series.
Mm-hmm.
Under duress, under the threat of death, basically, that he winds up under this pressure cooker coming up with something that's better than any of the other books he had written in the Misery series.
Mm-hmm. Richard, let me ask you a question on that, just because, and you might be coming to this point, but if I'm not mistaken, from the when he was writing that book, Annie was essentially like an editor-publisher type, and like forced him to do rewrites because she didn't like what he was writing or didn't think it was fair, and so because of that, he was forced to rewrite it a couple of times. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I think you remember that correctly. I think that she does, as the obsessive fan, sort of becomes the voice of the reader in a lot of ways. So I think you're absolutely on point with that.
Yeah.
It's funny that choice and counterpoint to The Princess Bride by S. Morgenstern. It's an author creating a book that has an author that's separate from that author, and they're kind of using it as it's kind of the in The Princess Bride. The book within the movie gives them freedom to have a fairy tale in this modern world, so they can react to the fairy tale components and call them sappy, or it can be the structure that they kind of bounce up against. And then the book within Misery is Stephen King kind of lashing out at this audience that won't let him escape this pulpy genre that he's been that's made him and has broken him too. So I find that really interesting.
What I liked about the reaction of like Annie Wilkes to this is like the Sheldon character is, I wouldn't say he's super popular or super famous. He kind of writes like kind of shitty books. Like I don't think that he's super wealthy. I don't think that he is the most famous person as a writer. But I love the idea of someone that has just like clung on to this really niche, set of books. And I think that is such a perfect encapsulation of like fandom. When you take something in that becomes yours, that you know everything about, that you've devoted to, that you're starting to potentially like write fan fiction about because you think you understand the characters more than the author does. I think that is really quite interesting. I really liked, ultimately Sheldon's at this point in his life where he wants to put this all behind him. He, in the book that he just finishes up before he's found, in his car crash, he killed off the main character, and she can't have that. That is like, it feels like all these like crazy Star Wars The Last Jedi people that have come in and like demanded that the characters are different than what they saw on screen because they, quote unquote, know better. And, obviously it's taken to a murderous degree, as Stephen King is wont to do. But like that, you watch this film and you totally understand the psyche of like a crazy fan who is just constantly trying to correct the things that the author has done, and they're like, they just can't accept it.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting that it's, from like a very broad story spectrum, it's the plot of Whiplash before the movie Whiplash came out. And that is, in order for someone to reach the apex of their art, they have to be tortured and go through hell. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that.
She says, "Not my tempo, cock-a-doodie." Paddy, what does the number 109 mean to you? Anything?
109. No.
It was episode in which you joined us for to discuss cover songs better than the original. That was, yeah.
Okay, so that was the 109th episode. I was thinking
109th
season 1, episode 9. I wasn't on season 1 of this.
Well, Anderson.
We were barely on season 1.
Fair enough.
So, if listeners, this is our halftime, so we're going to ask you to go back and dig into the archives. You got time on your hands. There's knock wood. There's not going to be another lockdown, but there might be. So you'll have the opportunity to, when you're not when you're not traveling and flying and joining all your family for the holidays this season, you'll have plenty of time to listen to this podcast. And you should listen to episode 109, in which we discuss with Paddy cover songs that are better than the original. And then Anderson, I know your voice, your dulcet tones have appeared on a few episodes, I think, giving your suggestions for certain topics. Do you recall which ones?
I was able to participate in the 100th episode party, in which I brought the Spider-Man villain category.
That's right.
That's true.
Ah, outstanding.
My son Felix is presently obsessed with Spider-Man villains. We have this kind of daily or weekly ritual where we draw and cut out Spider-Man paper dolls, or just superhero paper dolls. Started with Star Wars paper dolls, and presently we're just going through like the Sinister Six and these characters. His favorite right now is the Scorpion, and he just cuts out that Scorpion and he stings you. And
Max Gargan.
Then it's the Rhino, and we just have these crumpled up kind of bending paper dolls, and it's all Spider-Man guys. They're just knocking each other down.
Nice. I hope he defeats them as easily as Spider-Man does.
Right?
Usually he knocks them down, and as soon as they knock down, Felix will say, they push a button and they get back up. I don't know where he got that. I don't know where he got that from. Where that is just like the rule of life is that you get knocked down and someone pushes a button and they get back up. But
do you have a J. Jonah Jameson cutout doll?
No, but he wants to do Dr. Kirk Connors before he turns into the lizard.
Oh, okay.
It's very strange. Very strange.
So make sure you cut the one arm off.
Yeah.
So you can download and listen to those past episodes. We'd love it if you did that. And you could be like Paddy and Anderson, and maybe even influence future episodes by suggesting topics that we could point our brilliant intellects towards and aim our rapier wit at. So that would be solid if you did that for us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And it's safe to go back on Twitter now because the babbling yam bag is gone for the most part, or he's waning. His power is waning.
And apparently it works on Zoom, too, because I did not realize you could Zoom bomb episodes of the Mount Rushmore podcast.
You can go in and listen while they're being taped.
How do you think Anderson and I got here tonight? We just kept pushing random numbers and joining random meetings until we found this one.
We found the passcode on the dark web.
Yes. Cost me 8 Bitcoins.
I want to see you guys just randomly drop into a 4-hour Joe Rogan experience.
Okay, so we are now going to move on to our third round, which is Michael Winfield saying something that who knows, Richard might say the same thing. What's your third choice?
It looks like we're in that path, and if this really is a birthday wish of mine, we'll get the same 4 and end this podcast for forever. But it is the Handbook for the Recently Deceased in Beetlejuice.
Also on our list.
Not on my list.
Oh,
not on yours,
Richard.
What I love about this book is that it plays like a pivotal but kind of unsuspecting central role throughout this entire film. Is Adam and Barbara Bayland are killed when their car goes off the Winter River Bridge, and they walk back to their house after who knows how many months wandering in kind of like the netherworld, and they walk inside, and on their side table is this book that quote reads like stereo instructions. They don't know what's going on. They don't really know that they're dead for a little bit, and the book doesn't really help them out. It's written in a way that all of the ghosts and phantasms and people that have been dead for X hundreds of years seem to take it for granted, but they're just have no idea what's going on, and they're constantly being chided by either Juno, their caseworker, for not having brought it with them, or it falls into the hands of Lydia Dietz, and ultimately falls into the hands of Otho. And I like that this book is this thing that ingratiates them to Lydia, who befriends them because of it, but then also is this kind of totem for Otho to attack them and become the actual villain of the film. I mean, Beetlejuice is like this kind of mischievous character, and he kind of fucks with them, but like he's not that bad. Otho's a real dick, and he resurrects them and uses this power and quite know what he's doing. But I love that this book is this thing that is kind of carried through the film as something that no one quite understands, with maybe except for Lydia. But I just love the imagery on the book itself of this couple having passed into the afterlife, and maybe the cover of the book changes depending on who gets it, and just the whole conceit of it I think is really great.
Well, I mean, you bring up kind of an interesting point, and that is, I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be there to help them through the afterlife, but with the case that you've presented, the book is actually the villain of the movie. I mean, no good comes from this book for the couple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book creates the chaos that were they not to have the book, would they have found other help or no? No, it's not like other help is waiting, is it?
Well, the other help that was out there was, Beetlejuice in like an ad, a back page ad of a magazine, basically a help wanted section, or even worse.
Yeah, sell grit, hire Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Grit, America's family newspaper.
Right?
Oh, it's always this close to selling grit. As a couple, as a person who has been in many long-term relationships, in a 20-year relationship most recently, there is no handbook to being in a relationship, and sometimes the messages you get from the most reliable sources do more harm than good. They confuse you and confound you. They show you the conventional way versus the way you have to work out with the person you're with. So I do think in that film, their marriage is the death is the thing that brings them together as a couple. They think it's going to be this house, but really it's just this experience, traumatic experience that they go through. So that is a funny thing. I love that it's not a book that somebody's writing, because those have been what our suggestions have been so far. I was not a Beetlejuice aficionado when it came out. It took me a while to really appreciate it and understand it. I think because I thought it was about Beetlejuice, and he's in the movie 17 minutes of the movie or something like that. There's something ridiculous. Like Beetlejuice is only in less than 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, that would be a good topic. Title characters of movies that you barely see.
Okay, Manfredi, what do you got?
Well, before we move on, I just want to say I when you suggested the topic, I read it and then forgot about the movies part, and I just remembered the fictional books part. And I'm a little disappointed we didn't just go with fictional books, because I could have gone with a Simpsons choice and done 40 ways to cook 4 people or 4 humans. But sadly enough, we can't do that. So my third choice is the book Death and Taxes from the movie Stranger Than Fiction.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have seen this movie at all. I thought it was a very funny, poignant, well done movie. It's one of the movies in the era where Will Ferrell was attempting to do more straight type roles.
Yeah.
And basically he plays an IRS agent who starts hearing a narration voice in his head, a lovely British voice, female voice, who is narrating his life. And he goes to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist says, well, if it's a narrator, you should go see a literary professor. So he goes to a literary professor. They eventually figure out that the voice that he's hearing inside his head is this very famous author. And he goes to visit her, and basically she is writing the book of his life. And she is now stuck in writer's block and can't figure out how to finish it. But the one thing that she knows is that the main character, who is Will Ferrell, is going to die at the end of it. And so it's this whole kind of story about him, trying to come to terms with what is death. And, if his death is for a purpose of this, everyone is going to die. And if his death winds up becoming for this purpose of providing the kind of end point for this great novel, is that better than just some random death, 50 years from now, on your deathbed, dying of old age? Very funny movie. Very, like I said, very poignant. And I wish Emma Thompson, who played the author, I wish she would narrate my life. That would be pretty cool. I'd enjoy that.
That's one of those, I think I'd heard the genre described as high-low concept. It's like a high concept plot with a very character-driven execution. I feel like, like Groundhog Day, there are these moments where it's a drama, where even this big, hokey, finoky kind of plot doesn't overwhelm the fact that these people are feeling pain and uncertainty and loss. And what's neat about that too is it's a book that is yet to be finished, right?
Right. Yeah, she is in the process of writing it.
Mm-hmm.
Question in context of the movie. I had not seen it. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't seen it. Does the interaction that Will Ferrell's character have with the author, does it get meta enough that makes it into her book? Like,
no, it does not.
Okay.
As far as I remember, it's been 10 years since I've seen it. So
yeah, because I mean, there would be something kind of fun about that. It's the old Bugs Bunny trope where, like, Daffy Duck is arguing with the animator who's actually creating him, and it seems like that would be an opportunity for something like that, but I guess it didn't in that movie.
As a motion graphics and VFX professional, Paddy, you might enjoy the film. There's so much motion type in it that was done by a company called MK12 out of Kansas City.
Okay.
Who did the Bond openings for Casino Royale and a few films to follow. So really cool typography, like in the film. So
well, see, now I have two reasons to go check it out. A, Manfredi's recommendation, and B, a technical professional reason. I got to watch this movie.
Then you write it off afterwards.
Yeah, expense that bad boy.
Yeah.
Jeff, your depth of Kansas City Hollywood post-production professionals is fascinating.
He's the Annie Wilkes of Kansas City post-production professionals.
I love it.
Winfield, what is it? What you got? What's the last one?
Okay, my last one is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy from the 2005 film Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Also, the book, the radio play, the TV series,
the fragrance,
the fragrance, the Mel Brooks version of it. That what is I really focused on the idea of like a very central book within these movies, and the Hitchhiker's Guide, when I started thinking about it, is just this wonderful way to get this one person, Arthur Dent, into this greater universe, and for it to be this just, it was Wikipedia before Wikipedia. It was this collection of anecdotes and facts, about planets and things and drinks and sex and everything. And he has no idea what's going on. Like, I think what the greatest thing about this book is that it's presented to this person, initially in the mid 70s, before information was so readily available.
Right.
The idea of opening up your laptop or phone or whatever and looking anything up, 40 years ago is so different from today, when it's just like, okay, I can't quite remember the name of the lyrics to a song, so I can look up something close to it now, and I'll be able to find it. But the idea that that there is information, whether it's true or not, at your fingertips, I think is great. And just the idea that he runs into Prefect, and he's his kind of friend, and he's this friend that is a writer for this shitty book and this guide, and I just love this thing as an artifact in this universe that everybody trusts and everybody knows about. And Thompson being here, if there's any person that I would love to just narrate my life or anything, at least the movie, would be just Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot that can be said about his voice. Is just this perfectly enlightening yet also somehow condescending voice, which I think is what is needed for this book.
I do think maybe in Europe they have more use for guidebooks than we do here. If one could get in his Morris Minor and drive to Italy or France or Germany, I think there is a bigger culture that supports that book. Obviously, we have guidebooks and things here, but I imagine over there it's probably even more commonplace to have a big stack of these on the shelf in your home of your place, of your grandparents or something. So I discovered this book when I was a teen, when I was, I think, junior high, and that and the sequels were just something to kind of hold on to as adolescence was rattling my brain. But loved it. What were we going to say?
There seems to be, I think the European travel aspect plays a big part of it. There's so much inter country traveling that goes on within Europe. America doesn't quite have that. We tend to have like the here is the weird giant ball of twine.
Right. The mystery spot.
Here's the mystery spot. Here is like Sam and Max hit the road, and all of a sudden, you want to see the world's smallest fork? I guess so. Like all these, like we're a country of like weird things, rather a country of like how to interact with people.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're a country of roadside attractions because we were the first country that actually had freeways and roads.
Yeah, that and the fact that, in Europe, you've got like 9th century castles to look at, and we don't have that kind of history, really.
Yeah, good point.
We had to have something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, it almost seems like in the some of these stories, the book is kind of an update to the treasure map that somebody might have, or the some kind of map that they might have had on their way on the adventure. So, all right, Richard, do you have one more?
I do have one more.
Okay.
I can tell you what Richard's last one's going to be.
My
It's
last
obviously-
choice is Old Custer by Eli Cash.
Ah! Okay, so I have it written down right here.
What?
Well, everyone knows that Custer died at Little Bighorn.
Holy
But
smokes.
his book purpose is maybe he didn't.
Presupposes
Man, I
this.
know you.
Maybe you didn't.
I know you.
You know me so well.
Which-
Well, I did almost go with a family of geniuses
Yeah.
from the same movie.
Uh-huh.
I could have
You were-
mixed it up a little bit, but no. Well, that's it. Old Custer. The line that you just said is one of my favorite lines from any Wes Anderson film,
Yeah.
and I
of
use
course,
that
yeah.
anytime I'm watching or reading someone do something like pretentious and literary.
This is so we get to judge. We've got guests, Paddy Culham and Anderson Dahdouh, who get to review and help me judge. Of course, we had similar choices. Misery Returns, the book in Misery Returns, and The Princess Bride were both books within the stories, Misery and The Princess Bride. And then Guidebook for the Recently Deceased was from Beetlejuice. Hitchhikers was the titular book from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then Death and Taxes from Stranger Than Fiction. And Old Custer from the Royal Tenenbaums. So I'm going to pick two, the easy ones, Misery Returns and Princess Bride. So now Anderson and Paddy, you guys each get to pick one.
So we've been texting back and forth during this podcast to make sure that we're on the same page. And one of the books that we both came up with at the same time was Handbook for the Recently Deceased. So I
nice.
know that we can count that one as one of our picks.
Nice.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right. And what is the second? Is there a second one you want to pick?
I really like the custard pick personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like Wes Anderson strikes a very interesting note in a lot of films, and the fact that Michael premeditated Richard's pick, I think warrants the value.
That was a power move, Winfield. That was strong. That was very strong. Not only had it pre-picked, but had the passage from the book ready to go. God, that was great.
It was going to be Richard was either going to pick that or he was going to pick Yeast Lords from Gentlemen Broncos. I was 50-50.
We could have gone either way. I could have gone either way. Yeah.
Anderson and I are both disappointed that nobody picked Necronomicon Ex Mortes, the Book of the Dead from the Evil Dead series. But next day. Yes.
Hi, Cher. I have to say that book was actually the one that inspired the topic over Halloween.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, see, okay, so we're definitely in the same zone.
So-
So yes, I think those are our judgments, Anderson.
That's right. The
we
only
stand by it.
other one I was looking for was There and Back Again, Bilbo Baggins' book.
These guys don't like Lord of the Rings, so I decided to bail on that one. I was
And your audience.
I was playing to Jeff on that one. I know he's not a huge Lord of the Rings guy.
I'm not much of a Tolkien guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I love it. These guys.
Thank you, guests Anderson Dahdouh and Paddy Culham. This has been the Mount Rushmore of books within movies. I, as always, am Jeff.
Suck it, Winfield.
Michael.
Nice.